Hello, welcome to another edition of All or Nada according to Jack. Uh, I had talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago, but I had a special treat for everybody. Basically, I came up with this idea in my head about a mini series. We're going to call this The Formidable Years of Jack Toledano. These are the years that I really started to get into music, and I really became a fan of music. All things rock and roll, whether it be early heavy metal, uh, what they didn't call at the time classic rock, but as we knew it at the time, it was just rock or FM rock or album-oriented rock or even arena rock. But these were the years that I really came of age for me as a fan of all things music. So basically, so I was born in 1964, and I really started to get into all things music in I would say 1977. Uh, that was when that was my first year of junior high. Or middle school, as they call it now. But that was about the time that I started to, listen to other people talk about all these bands, and I started to listen to FM radio, and I started to get all these suggestions from friends of mine. Oh, you try listen to this and try this, and what do you think of this? So we're going to get into some of those bands, and this hopefully this mini series will come to, in some small way, give you some idea or some background of how my musical tastes kind of formed. So we're going to talk. So today we're going to talk about the year 1977. So wait for it. It's always disappearing when I need it. Ah, there it is. 1977. And as another added bonus, I went to Barnes and Noble today, and I was looking in the in the magazine section. Actually, the other video that I just recorded talking about KK's Priest and Glenn Tipton responding to KK Downing's talk over the last few years. Basically, I was looking for some magazines, and I didn't find any. I didn't find the Guitar Player magazine that had that article. Instead, I found this. You can see it. Nice picture of Jimmy Page. I'm covering Robert Plant. You can see Freddie Mercury and Angus Young. Fortunately, this magazine is covering my hiccups, so that's a good thing. But in this edition, which talks about the 70s, possibly the greatest decade of rock and roll music, but there is a section that talks specifically about 1977, and we'll get into that later. For now, we'll talk about what I put together. So 1977, so I have it laid out in sections. We talk about notable rock albums that were released. We talk about pop hits that were released, Grammys of that year, TV shows that just started, existing popular TV shows, deaths of that time, movies, and at the very end, we talk about who the Oscar for Best Movie went to. So let's start off. Notable rock albums released. So a band that I grew to be a big fan of, Kiss, released Love Gun. Another band, and this was an album that I bought. So yes, I will talk about albums, but I will also talk about albums that I actually bought. Jethro Tull released Songs from the Wood, the first of their trilogy. Great, great album, and I did buy that as well. That was the second Tull album that I ever bought after I had bought MU The Best of Jethro Tull. Next, a band that at this time I had never heard of, Judas Priest, released their first album on Columbia Records called Sin After Sin. And there would be some great barn burners on that album that I would come to realize in a couple of years. But at this time, middle school, never heard of them. Next, Foreigner's self-titled first album. They were considered a new album at that time, a new band at that time, and they came on like gangbusters, and they were a regular hit machine in those first couple of years. Next, AC/DC, Let There Be Rock. What else do we have? Ted Nugent, Cat Scratch Fever. Even then, I thought he was a madman, the Motor City Madman. Next, we had another band that I hadn't heard of for a couple of years. I don't think I heard of them until 81, 82. A band called UFO, putting out an album called Lights Out, an album that I would discover many years later. What a great album it was. Rush, I would hear of them maybe a year later. They had an album called Farewell to Kings, great album, with a great song called Xanadu, amongst others, Circumstances. This next band, back then I could hear it in my sleep. So I lived in typical Long Island suburbia in 1977. You know, we lived in a row of what they called Cape Cod houses. And our next door neighbor, there was this teenage girl who was maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. She bought this album and played it over and over and over and over ad nauseum. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. I heard that album so many goddamn times I wanted to barf. But a couple of years later, I would grow to appreciate how good it was. And last year, we would mourn the loss of Meatloaf. Moving on, Queen, News of the World. Another great album. We are the champions. Okay, another album that I acquired, I wouldn't say bought, acquired. Aerosmith, Draw the Line. I think the local library had one of those bookmobiles, and I borrowed it from the bookmobile and never returned it. So I guess they forgot all about it, so I kept it. Probably a little bit of a come down at that time after their great album Rocks, but a decent album nonetheless. Next album, an album that I bought, Cheap Trick in Color, had an early version of I Want You to Want Me, and Clock Strikes 10, some other, little ditties of power pop Cheap Trick. That, again, that wasn't a term back then. What else do we have? ELO released a double album, Out of the Blue. Great opening song, Turn to Stone. Leonard Skinner, sadly, and we'll talk about that later, this would be their last album with the original lineup with Ronnie Van Zant, Street Survivors. Great album in itself. Landmark album, probably the first album I ever bought, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. Pink Floyd had a great album that year. Animals, I guess that's where the pink floating pink pig came from. That would be in their concerts. Here's an album that I bought, and probably the first really, really bad album that I didn't want on my shelves. And at the first chance I got, I turned it back in, or I sold it for the dollar just to get it the hell off my shelves. So Peter Frampton released a landmark live album called Franton Comes Alive. So I bought his follow-up, I'm in You. No good. No good. Had to get rid of it. Steve Miller Band was busy with an album called Book of Dreams. Yes, going for the one. Styx, Welcome to the Grand Illusion. Bought that album. Grateful Dead, they were still going strong. They had an album called Terrapin Station. Foghat released their first live album with a great version of Slow Ride, their signature version. That and Fool for the City, great album. Motorhead released their self-titled first album. Chicago would release Chicago 11. Sadly, that would be their last album with Terry Kath. We'll talk about that again later. Steely Dan released what at the time I thought was their greatest album. Pretty much not a bad song on that album. The album Asia. Of course, Peg was a big hit. We may talk about that a little bit in a little while. My fellow Long Islander, Billy Joel, came out with probably his best album, The Stranger. Do 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 do. And then, of course, Kansas, America's premier prog rock band at that time, Point of No Return. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about some notable pop hits of 1977. Good or bad. Eagles, not only did they have the album Hotel California, oh no, I think that came out in 76, but there was a little bit of a carryover to 77 with the title track Hotel California, as well as the one signature Glenn Frey song on that album, New Kid in Town. Donna Summer, I feel love. I shouldn't even attempt that. No way. Great song, though. I did like Donna Summer. See, she was a pop diva for the right reasons. She was never in the news for the wrong reasons. She was an inspiration. Rod Stewart. Tonight's the night. Oh yeah, that's a song that I can hear in my sleep. A song all about sex. Leo Sayer, you make me feel like dancing. Manfred Mann, a remake of Bruce Springsteen's song Blinded by the Light, and a great version as it was. This is a cringeworthy song for me. She was a great singer, but I didn't like her. Barbra Streisand, Theme from A Star Is Born. Was it Kyle from South Park who said that they could land the stealth bomber on her nose? LOL. All right. Hall & Oates, great song. She's a rich girl. Meanwhile, another band that I didn't like, I was very surprised to see a top 10 land on Pete Pardo's Sea of Tranquility about this band, ABBA. 2 songs, Dancing Queen, Knowing Me, Knowing You. Thelma Houston, Don't Leave Me This Way. In retrospect, that was a good song. I hated disco at that time, but now it has a bit of a nostalgic quality for me. Stevie Wonder, both my son and I like Stevie Wonder. I especially like this song, Sir Duke. It's a little tribute to Duke Ellington. Casey and the Sunshine Band, another song I've heard in my sleep. I'm Your Boogeyman. I made the mistake of writing that uh, on my school notebook, and I got chastised for it. Scribbled it out, never mentioned it again. I didn't know it was cool then. It took me a little while. Fleetwood Mac, two great songs off of Rumors, Dreams, and Don't Stop. Barry Manilow, looks like we made it. Good old Barry. I still remember when my wife and I went to Las Vegas a few years ago, and we saw as we passed on the monorail. I think it's the West something hotel, big marquee. Barry Manilow in concert brought back memories. Another very cringe-worthy song for me. Pat Boone's daughter, Debbie Boone, You Light Up My Life. They played that song to death on AM radio. I had to change it every time they freaking put it on. Bee Gees, How Deep Is Your Love? Another cringe-worthy song for me at the time, but now it has that nostalgic quality. Engelbert Humperdinck, After the Lovin', Chicago, the only Peter Cetera song on Chicago 11, Baby What a Big Surprise. I get it that a few of the members of Chicago were deeply disenchanted with the fact that they were becoming a hit band, thanks to Peter Cetera's, If You Leave Me Now, Baby What a Big Surprise, etc. Meanwhile, Hart was cranking out the great songs with that E-flat riff, Barracuda, Commodores, Brick House. The Carpenters, they were a little past their prime. My wife is a big Carpenter fan. In fact, to appease her, I actually played a little Carpenters for her on the ride down to Florida on my Spotify. This song didn't come on. This was a little bit of a departure for them. Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft. A little bit more progressive Carpenters, but pretty cool. Meanwhile, Styx, the great song, Come Sail Away. Of course, the 6-minute original was cut way down for AM. Foreigner, churning away the hits with Cold as Ice. Great song. Crystal Gale, Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue. Jimmy Buffett with his famous song, Margaritaville. Here's a song that gave me great pride in being a New Yorker. This unknown band called Odyssey with this great song, You're a Native New Yorker. You should know the score by now. You're a native New Yorker. Love that song. Carly Simon, Nobody Does It Better. Steely Dan, Peg, off of Asia. Talking Heads, they wouldn't become famous until the turn of the decade. Meanwhile, they had this great new song called Psycho Killer. They would become a little more popular in a couple of years with the emergence of New Wave coming to the forefront. 10cc. I actually heard this song, so I didn't say this before, but summer of 77, this David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, with all those killings. I missed all that. Of course, I was in Italy. I have this DVD called The Bronx Is Burning, all about the Yankees, and their turbulent war between manager Billy Martin and owner George Steinbrenner. Very entertaining DVD put on by ESPN. you're a fan of baseball, check it out. It's really good. Uh, that Tortura, I forget his first name, but did a great job as Billy Martin. But anyway, while I was in Italy, I actually heard the song on the radio, 10cc, The Things We Do for Love. That's how popular it was. And then, of course, Queen, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. So that's notable pop hits. I picked these all out at random, just so you're aware. Okay, Grammys for 1977. Album of the Year, Stevie Wonder. Songs in the Key of Life. Song of the Year, by a guy who didn't write the song. I write the songs, Barry Manilow. Best New Artist, the Starland Vocal Band, with another song, Ad Nauseum, that I would hear all the time. Afternoon Delight. Little did I know, there's a lot of sexual innuendo. Best Pop Vocal Performance, female, Linda Ronstadt. Great vocals. Best Pop Vocal Performance for male, Stevie Wonder. Good job, Stevie. Best Pop Vocal Performance for a group, Chicago, and in particular, Peter Cetera, with If You Leave Me Now. New TV shows of the time. This was a show that I used to love, came out of Sacramento, California, The Family of 8. I come from only a family of 2. Me and my brother, who you may have seen in the last video, one of my last videos at New Smyrna Beach. So this is a siblings of 8. 8 is enough. Dick Van Patten. This is a show that I love. This is from Santa Monica, California, and I actually got to visit that pier one time. So cool. Three's Company. There are those that say that I look a little like Jack Ritter. Why couldn't I have his luck? The Betty White Show. And there was a show called Soap, a situation comedy made to appear like a soap opera. Little silly, Richard Mulligan, that kind of thing. I guess California was very popular because then they had a show called Chips, California Highway Patrol. Lou Grant had his own show, a drama spin-off from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And then, of course, this show, which got a lot of criticism at the time, The Love Boat. Promise you something for everyone. Funny thing is, I actually did take a princess cruise with my family about 5, 6 years ago. And it was with the Princess Cruises. And, there was a little homage to the Love Boat show. And in one of our pictures that my wife Susan and I took, with the little collage, behind the glass of the Love Boat. So, because 1977 is the first year that I'm covering, I'm going to talk about some popular TV shows that were still running at the time. $6 Million Man, Happy Days, very popular at that time. Hey! Barney Miller, possibly one of the greatest bass lines that I ever remember. Starsky and Hutch, Welcome Back, Kotter, Charlie's Angels, but Farrah Fawcett Majors was gone by this time. Laverne and Shirley, What's Happening? The Carol Burnett Show is still going. One Day at a Time. Alice. So funny. So many years later, my son Jason and I were watching Dumb and Dumber, and Jim Carrey, he's He's in the diner with his buddy. I forget his name. So he calls out the lady behind the counter. Excuse me, Flo. Of course, Jason didn't get the inference at the time. He didn't know that there was a show called Alice where that came from. Of course, I got it. Wonder Woman. Yeah, Linda Carter. Gorgeous. Sanford and Son, the last season. I loved Red Fox. Years ago, my father was watching it. When before they had DVDs, they still had VHSs. He got this VHS and he plugs it in and he's watching and he is just laughing hysterically. I don't think in all my life I've ever heard my father laugh as hard as he did. This was actually, he was watching Red Fox doing his comedy on stage. And yes, he was as funny as hell. Saturday Night Live, the quintessential lineup. And of course, the Bionic Woman. So deaths, very sad. We lost the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. I was in Italy when I heard about that. My uncle actually told me about it. And then, of course, there was the loss of Leonard Skinner. Very, very, very sad. We lost Ronnie Van Zant and Steve Gaines and his sister Cassie Gaines, who was one of the female backup singers. Movies at the time: Star Wars, Smokey and the Bandit, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Saturday Night Fever. Unbelievable. If I could just get that image of John Travolta out of my head, wouldn't be soon enough. The Goodbye Girl, The Spy Who Loved Me, Bond movie of the time. Oh God. And then, of course, Woody Allen's Annie Hall. And the Oscar goes to Annie Hall. So now, as an added bonus, we get to talk about what's in this book. We call it The Spirit of 77. So I'm going to read to you some of the things Classic Rock magazine says happened in 1977. I can find it. And here we go. Here's a band we didn't talk about, but was punk rock and new wave were coming into their own. Band called The Clash headline the opening night of the Roxy, London's first punk rock club. The Police rehearsed for the very first time in drummer Stuart Copeland's London flat. A couple of years later, they would come into existence. Queen began their biggest U.S. tour to date in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with Thin Lizzy in support. The Eagles' Hotel California hits #1 in the U.S. for the first time. According to Joe Walsh, we hated it because we worked on it for so long. When it did so well, it threw us. Pink Floyd released Roger Waters' overlooked masterpiece, Animals. Great album. It was a bit of a return to the group feel. Quite a cheerful session, actually. Nick Mason. Singer-poet Patti Smythe breaks her neck after falling 15 feet into the orchestra pit at a gig in Tampa, Florida. Oh, wow. Ex-Fleetwood Mac leader Peter Green is committed to mental care after attacking his accountant. Wow, that's the guy who wrote the Green Manalishi. Basically a concert ender for Judas Priest many years later. Artie Manchester punk band Buzzcocks released their landmark debut EP, Spiral Scratch. Wasn't sure if it said scratch or snatch or whatever. Disco had John Travolta in a white suit. Rock had a 350-pound behemoth in a frilly shirt. This was war. There you go. Meatloaf. All right. Fleetwood Mac released Rumors, their 11th album. It will go on to sell 40 million copies. I think I had that. I think I bought the 40th millionth copy. Original Sex Pistols bassist Glenn Matlock is fired. He is replaced by Sid Vicious. David Coverdale releases his debut solo album, Whitesnake. And my colleagues, Pete Pardo and Martin Popoff, both were on a show on Reels called something, the story of the song about Whitesnake very recently. Congratulations, guys. Looked very cool. I got to see your 3-minute snippet while I was in Florida. I didn't have Reels, but thanks to Craig Kaminsky, who put a little 3-minute montage together so I can see it while I was off site. Thank you for that. This is a funny one. Keith Richards is arrested in Toronto after police find heroin in his hotel room. Huh. Will they be saying that about Keith Richards in 2077? At a Pink Floyd show in Montreal, Roger Waters spits on a fan, sowing the seeds for the wall. Why would you spit on a fan, dumbass? Elvis Costello releases his debut album, My Aim Is True. US band Ram Jam scores a huge hit with a souped-up cover of Lead Belly's Black Betty. Sorry, don't get it, don't like it. Led Zeppelin play their last ever US date at Oakland Coliseum in California. That was very sad. So Led Zeppelin didn't have any album activity in '77. They were touring, and fortunately, they got so after that Oakland concert, they flew to New Orleans to prepare to play the Silverdome. Robert Plant got the news that his son Carrot passed away. So basically, they canceled the rest of the tour. And you wouldn't hear Led Zeppelin for a little while after that. Very sad. Moving right along, then Lizzie released Bad Reputation, their last LP with Brian Robertson. Generation X, featuring a pre-MTV Billy Idol, released their debut single, Your Generation. Grateful Dead still going strong. Play in front of 110,000 people at Old Bridge, New Jersey. Former glam rock idol, Mark Bolan is killed when his car hits a tree in Barnes, South London. The Stranglers released their second album of 1977, No More Heroes. It will peak at #2 in the UK album chart. Rock and Roll War Horses in Waiting, Motorhead released their debut album. According to Lemmy, punkers, rockers, I don't care who listened as long as they bought it. Sounds like our Lemmy. Let's see, what else do we have? Fans riot during a sold-out show on the Clash's White Riot Tour at the Rainbow in London. The Sex Pistols signed to Virgin Records for £15,000. They'd been dropped by A&M and EMI. What a surprise. Bunch of bollocks, mate. Tom Petty plays his first UK show supporting Nils Lofgren at the Cardiff Capitol. Woking Mod punks The Jam released their debut album In the City. Emerson Lake and Palmer begin a US tour with a full orchestra in tow at $200K a week. It's the most expensive in history. Star Wars opens in 32 screens in America. It earns $210 million, 1977. Cinema is never the same again. UFO released their sixth album, Lights Out. It just misses the UK top 50. That's when it all kicked off. Great times for us, crazy times for us, according to Phil Mogg of UFO. Tom Waits is arrested for disturbing the peace at Duke's Tropicana coffee shop in LA. And I think, Ted Nugent. I killed 40 or 50 animals in 1977. It was a slow year. Sorry, don't support that. Let's see. Steve Perry. Now, punk was so raw and had so much fuck you in it. I really loved it. Steve Perry said that? Interesting. Let's see. Neil Young. Stuff like the Sex Pistols or the Clash was great, and they influenced me. And then Kiss. Paul Stanley. I didn't see what was going on at Studio 54 as disco. I saw it as hedonism with a beat. I think that about wraps it up. It was yeah, to talk more about albums at the time. But that's it. That was 1977. Didn't go to any concerts yet. My first concert would be in 1979, but at least you have an idea of some of the things that I listened to and what was happening during that great musical year of 1977. Sorry, dry throat. So this is fun. Maybe in another week or so, we'll talk about 1978. This has been All or Nada, according to Jack, with Jack Toledano. Have a good day, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye, all.